Book 1, The Blazing Ronin, Wandering Blades. Chapter 13, The Orphan's Journey. The morning mist still clung to the forest canopy as Akira led his band of warriors deeper into the ancient woodlands. The Ronin moved with his usual purposeful strides, emerald katana held at the ready should any threats present themselves. At his side strode the familiar form of Masaru, the grizzled warrior's intense gaze sweeping their surroundings for any signs of danger. Just behind them came Kaya and the rest of the Blazing Vanguard, their expressions hardened with grim determination despite the early hour. But it was the slight figure bringing up the rear that drew Akira's attention. Takeshi, the young orphan boy who had pledged himself to the Ronin's cause, struggled to keep up with the group's grueling pace. His thin face was set in a mask of concentration, desperately trying to mask his exhaustion and weariness. Akira felt a pang of something unfamiliar tighten his chest as he watched the orphan's efforts. Empathy. Concern. He wasn't quite sure, such emotions were still new and unsettling to the hardened warrior. "We'll make camp soon," the Ronin stated over his shoulder, his deep voice seeming to rouse Takeshi from his fatigue-induced haze. "See that you're well rested, young one. The path ahead only grows more treacherous from here." The orphan boy gave a slight nod, his eyes shining with a mixture of relief and renewed determination. Akira regarded him for a moment longer before turning his gaze forward once more, his expression inscrutable. He could admit to himself now that taking Takeshi under his wing had been an impulsive decision, one driven more by instinct than pragmatism. The orphan had no combat training, no skills that would prove useful on the dangerous road they walked. And yet, there was something about the boy's haunted eyes and quiet intensity that had called out to Akira on a deeper level. He saw echoes of his own tragic past reflected there, the all too familiar look of a child who had witnessed and endured far too much for their years. Perhaps that was why the Ronin had allowed Takeshi to join the Vanguard's ranks despite the potential risks. Or perhaps there was something more at play, some deeper purpose or destiny that had brought their paths crashing together so unexpectedly. The day wore on as the warriors continued their march, the forest slowly giving way to the foothills of an imposing mountain range. Finally, as the sun began dipping towards the horizon, Akira called a halt and signaled for them to make camp in a sheltered vale. As the rest of the vanguard set about their tasks, the Ronin beckoned Takeshi over with a slight gesture. The orphan boy approached hesitantly, his eyes shining with a mixture of apprehension and determination as he regarded Akira. "You struggled to keep pace today," the warrior stated without preamble, his deep voice tinged with quiet intensity. "Our path will only grow more arduous from here on out. Are you certain you wish to continue walking this road, young one?" Takeshi seemed to swell with conviction at the Ronin's words, his thin shoulders squaring as he met Akira's piercing emerald stare steadily. "I am certain, my lord," he replied, his high voice wavering only slightly with the intensity of his emotions. I have nowhere else to go. No home, no family to return to. You and the Vanguard are all I have left in this world." The orphan fell silent for a moment, seeming to wrestle with some great internal struggle. Finally, he continued in a low, anguished tone. "The demons came in the night, they took everything from me. My parents, my little sister, I could do nothing but watch as they were slaughtered before my eyes." Takeshi's eyes blazed with a mixture of shame and fury as he leveled his stare at Akira once more. "I was weak, helpless to stop them. To save the ones I loved most. But I swear to you, Blazing Ronin, I will never be that powerless again." The young boy dropped to one knee, bowing his head in a show of fealty as his voice took on a solemn, reverberating quality. "Train me in your ways, my lord. Teach me to wield a blade and harness the incredible power you command. I will be your most devoted student, and together we will cut down any who would deal in such cruelty and dishonor." A heavy silence fell over the small clearing as Takeshi's words seemed to linger in the air. Akira studied the orphan for a long moment, feeling that same strange tightening in his chest once more. He could see the all too familiar shadows of tragedy and loss burning in the boy's eyes. The Ronin knew that look well. It was the same haunted expression he had worn for years after the emerald cataclysm that decimated his lord's army. The same thirst for justice, for redemption that had first set Akira on the path of the blazing Ronin all those years ago. And in that moment, the warrior knew he could not turn Takeshi away, no matter the potential risks or dangers that lay ahead. For the young orphan was a kindred spirit, one who had witnessed the same darkness, the same depravity that Akira had sworn to combat until his dying breath. To deny Takeshi's desire to walk that path as well would be a violation of everything the Ronin stood for. Slowly, reverently, Akira extended his hand and gripped the young boy's shoulder, causing him to look up with shining eyes. "Very well, Takeshi," the warrior intoned, his deep voice resonating with quiet power. "From this day forth, you shall be my latest student, the newest initiate to walk the path of the blazing Ronin." The Ronin's emerald gaze seemed to blaze with intensity as he leveled it at the orphan, his next words carrying the unmistakable weight of destiny. "I cannot promise that the road ahead will be an easy one. You will be pushed to the very limits of your endurance, both physical and spiritual. Scars and hardship will be your constant companions as you strive to harness the incredible power required." Akira fell silent for a moment, allowing the gravity of his proclamation to hang in the air. Finally, he continued in that same measured tone, squeezing Takeshi's shoulder firmly. "But if you can persevere, if you can embrace your pain and let it forge you into an indomitable weapon of light and honor, then you will emerge on the other side remade. Reborn as a true warrior, one powerful enough to cut through the shadows and restore balance to this world." The orphan boy's eyes shone with a mixture of awe and determination as he gave a solemn nod of acceptance. Akira regarded him for one final moment before rising and turning to face the rest of the vanguard. "Take your rest while you can, my friends," the Ronin called out, his deep voice resonating through the small valley. "For on the morrow, Takeshi's training under my tutelage begins in earnest. And the path of the blazing Ronin shows no quarter for the weak of spirit or resolve." As his warriors settled in for the night, Akira felt a strange sense of calm and clarity wash over him. He knew that taking the orphan boy under his wing would be a challenge, one that could potentially undermine everything they were striving for if Takeshi proved unable to endure the incredible hardships ahead. But the Ronin could not deny the sense of purpose, of meaning that had blossomed within him at the young orphan's impassioned plea. For perhaps this was the deeper destiny that had drawn their paths together. Takeshi was to be more than just another warrior in the vanguard's ranks. No, Akira could sense it now, an inextricable link binding their fates on a fundamental level. The orphan boy was to be his legacy, the next torchbearer to carry on the path of the blazing Ronin once the warrior's own fire was finally extinguished. As he gazed up at the star-strewn cosmos hanging over the mountain vale, Akira felt that all too familiar intensity, that hunger for redemption flaring to life once more. He would pour every ounce of his being into forging Takeshi into an unstoppable force, a true hero powerful enough to cut through the shadows and restore balance to these lands. No matter the costs, no matter the sacrifices required, the orphan's journey was only just beginning. And the Ronin vowed to walk that path with him until Takeshi had been reborn into a warrior worthy of carrying on his legend. For Akira was more than just a symbol of order and discipline now. He was a beacon of hope for this age, one that would shine all the brighter once he had found his successor in the form of young Takeshi. The blazing Ronin's fire would burn for generations to come. This, he would ensure with every drop of his spirit. The years seemed to bleed together after that fateful night in the mountain vale. Akira drove himself and his new student Takeshi with a single-minded intensity that would have broken most warriors within a few short months. But the orphan boy proved to be made of sterner stuff than even the Ronin anticipated. He endured every grueling trial, every punishing regimen of the path with a stoic determination that continually impressed his master. From before the first rays of dawn until long after night had fallen, Takeshi could be found training relentlessly. Mastering first the way of the sword under Akira's legendary tutelage, his body and spirit being forged into an unstoppable weapon of light and honor. Then came the more esoteric aspects of the Ronin's teachings, meditation and focus exercises designed to attune Takeshi's spirit to the incredible power granted by the Old Ones. Akira watched with no small amount of pride as the young orphan's markings slowly began to manifest, pulsing emerald patterns spreading across his body like roots taking hold. Takeshi took to harnessing and channeling those energies like a prodigy, his mind and soul seeming to resonate on a fundamental level with the ancient forces he was learning to wield. Within a few short years, he had mastered abilities and techniques that had taken the Ronin decades to comprehend fully. And yet, despite his student's rapid progression and incredible prowess, Akira could sense there was still something holding the young man back. A lingering shadow, a core of unresolved anguish that prevented Takeshi from fully embracing his destiny. It was on a warm summer evening, as master and student were winding down from their daily training regimen, that the Ronin finally broached the subject. Takeshi was in the midst of his nightly meditation when Akira's deep voice broke the stillness. "You fight with incredible skill and power, my student," the warrior stated, his words laced with quiet intensity. "In the years since pledging yourself to my teachings, you have advanced further than I could have ever anticipated." The young man's eyes opened slowly, his expression serene despite the sheen of sweat coating his brow and chiseled torso. Akira held his gaze for a long moment before continuing. "And yet, I cannot help but sense there is still something holding you back. Some lingering doubt or regret that prevents you from fully embracing your destiny as the Blazing Ronin's heir." Takeshi seemed to tense at his master's words, a series of emotions flickering across his features too quickly for Akira to decipher. Finally, the young warrior rose to his feet in one fluid motion, turning to face the Ronin fully as his markings pulsed with ethereal energy. "You are not wrong to sense such things, my lord," he stated, his deep voice tinged with quiet anguish. "For though I have walked this path with every ounce of my being, the demons of my past still linger, whispering in the back of my mind." Takeshi fell silent for a moment, seeming to struggle with some great internal turmoil. When he continued, his words carried the unmistakable weight of a man laying his soul bare. "I see them every night when I dream, master. My parents, my little sister May. I relive those final moments again and again, watching helplessly as they are slaughtered before my eyes by those monsters who came in the night." The young warrior's fists clenched tightly, his entire body seeming to tremble with barely restrained emotion as his markings flared even brighter. "Their screams, their anguished cries for mercy, they echo through my nightmares endlessly. And no matter how much I train, how powerful I become, I cannot seem to exorcise the guilt and shame I feel for being too weak to save them." Akira remained silent, sensing there was more his student needed to give voice to. "Sure enough," Takeshi continued after a moment in a low, anguished tone. "I want to hate them, master. To give in to that burning fury and cut down those responsible with extreme prejudice. To make them suffer as my family suffered in their final moments." The young warrior leveled his intense stare at the Ronin, his eyes shining with unshed tears of rage and sorrow. "But I know that is not the path you have set me on. Not the way of light and honor that will allow me to truly harness these incredible abilities you have bestowed." Takeshi fell silent once more, seeming to wrestle with his own inner demons. Finally, he gave a slow shake of his head, his expression becoming inscrutable once more. "So you see, my lord, though I have advanced far in my training, I am still plagued by doubts. By the shadows of my tragic past that continually hold me back from achieving true enlightenment on this path." A heavy silence fell over the small clearing as the young warrior's words hung in the air. Akira studied his student for a long moment, feeling that same strange tightening in his chest once more. Finally, the Ronin rose and approached Takeshi, resting one hand on the young man's shoulder as he leveled his piercing emerald stare at him. "You are not alone in being haunted by such demons, my student," Akira stated, his deep voice resonating with quiet conviction. I too have walked that same path of rage and sorrow, allowing the tragedies of my past to consume me utterly. The Ronin fell silent for a moment, his expression becoming distant as his mind slipped back through the years to that fateful day on Kansen Ridge. He could still see it all so clearly, the blinding emerald flare, the deafening thunderclap as the cataclysm ripped his former life asunder. After that day, after watching my lord and brothers cut down before my eyes, I very nearly allowed the hatred and thirst for vengeance to take complete hold of me, Akira continued, his deep voice tinged with quiet anguish. I came so close to surrendering my entire being to the shadows, to embracing oblivion utterly and becoming a force of pure, unrestrained destruction. The warrior's emerald gaze seemed to blaze with intensity as he leveled it at Takeshi, his next words carrying the unmistakable weight of truth. But I could not, for that path leads only to eternal emptiness and despair, my student. One cannot cut through the shadows by becoming the darkness, that is a truth I had to claw my way back from the brink to finally realize. Akira fell silent for a moment, allowing his words to linger in the air. Finally, he gave his student's shoulder a firm squeeze, his expression softening ever so slightly. The path of the Blazing Ronin is one of incredible challenge and hardship, Takeshi. Of constant struggle to maintain one's discipline and convictions in the face of overwhelming anguish and sorrow. The Ronin's emerald gaze burned with quiet intensity as he held the young warrior's stare. But that is what will separate you from those who would simply surrender to their inner demons, who lack the fortitude to endure such incredible burdens. You must embrace your past, allow it to fuel your determination rather than consume you utterly. Akira leaned in closer, his next words seeming to resonate with ancient power. Only once you have achieved that level of enlightenment, of being able to channel your emotions into an indomitable force for light and order, only then will you have truly mastered your abilities as my heir, powerful enough to cut through the shadows and restore balance to this world.